Curious to get your thoughts in terms of the roles that corporations and CEOs in particular play here.
I mean, obviously they're a small group, but they're very influential because they control a lot of spending power. And I think it's really interesting to see what's happening here. I mean, I know many CEOs. I think it's no surprise that they do tilt Republican overall. But I think the one thing you can say to a near certainty is that few, if any, are socialists. And as you see somebody like Bernie Sanders rising to the top of the Democratic field, they are going to be opening their wallets probably for Republican congressional candidates. I think we're going to see more of that. A lot of the contributions that we've just seen, I think, to the Democratic congressional candidates, both in the House and the Senate, has less to do with the individual ideological leanings of the donors and more of a desire to keep a divided government. I think, again, to generalize, CEOs like a divided government. After all, they have all succeeded tremendously pretty much with the status quo. They do not want to see revolutionary change. They don't want to see some of the more extreme populist impulses of Trump unleashed, and they don't want to see, God forbid, from their point of view, a socialist president with a Democratic House and Senate, who would maybe actually make it possible for some of these things like the wealth tax to happen. So I think you can, using that lens, we will see a lot of shifting and moving around as the contours of the race become more clear.
MarketWatch says not one S&P 500 CEO is donating to Bernie Sanders. Not surprising. To your point, I just wonder if it's going to help Bernie Sanders to say something like that. You know, everybody else is backed by these big corporations who have, you know, all sorts of interests, and they're going to manipulate their candidates.
I'm sure Bernie Sanders would just say, oh, bring it on. Yes, this is definitely. I mean, he's been using it against Buttigieg in particular, saying, oh, my God, he's got a billionaire donor or two. And, yeah, that hardcore Sanders slash, you know, people who are very comfortable with the socialist label, yeah, they are going to rally. That's why some of them are so passionate. But, again, I think the issue for the big election is who do you get in the center? And CEOs, generally speaking, yeah, they tell Republican, but they, in my experience, they are centrists by and large because, as I said, they have succeeded in the environment that we live in. They're not looking for revolutionary change. They want predictability. Yes, they love the Trump tax cuts, but they don't like the Trump tariffs. And they do see things through the lens of how it affects their corporations. And a wealth tax, higher corporate taxes, nationalizing industry, this is like poison from their point of view.
So do you think they would prefer a Republican executive and a Democratic Senate, or vice versa? Or what combination of executive and congressional do you think?
I think they're quite comfortable right now with a Republican president and at least one
House that's blue.
Yeah, the House that's Democratic, because that has been a pretty effective check on him. I think they'd also be very comfortable with a centrist Democrat. I mean, who's not, they don't like the populist impulses of Trump. They don't like the tariffs. They would like to see someone. I don't think they really have problems, some of the middle of the road Democrats. And then they would like to see a Republican Senate to check any impulses to raise taxes too much.
Right. Even Bloomberg proposes significant tax increases. I think he's got that.
Yeah, I mean, that's not going to happen with a Senate that's controlled by the Republicans.
But you say that they're happy. I mean, that they've been, the Congress or the House has been able to hold back the president, really, though? You think so? I mean,
well,
Justice Department, State Department, regulatory agencies, the Fed. I mean, I can think of all the places that this administration, or at least this executive, has pushed harder, perhaps, than some of the predecessors.
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously the chief executive has tremendous prerogatives, and Trump has been taking a very expansive view of the powers of the presidency, not that he's the first, but yet nonetheless, from a legislative point of view, I mean, some of the really revolutionary proposals would take legislative action if, say, Sanders was in the White House, and that's just not going to happen. I think there is maybe a risk, though, that if Sanders is the nominee, there will be a huge outpouring of money into those Republican Senate and House races, and less to the Democrats. And then you could see, if Trump wins, and then you could see back a Republican House again, that's not really what they want. They don't want to see an unfettered Trump with a compliant. And by the way, you know, the Republicans blocked him on Obamacare in the first term, but he's been kind of systematically getting rid of the anti-Trump, you know,
also, they've just,
members
I mean,
of the
a lot of
party.
it has been dismantled. anyway.
A lot, but I would say he has been molding the party in his image, and they're going to be different Republicans. If somehow the Republicans retake control of the House, my guess would be it's going to be a much more pro-Trump legislature than it was the last time.
I think it'll be interesting to see who lines up behind Trump this time versus last time. I mean, it was Peter Thiel. Now there's a report Larry Ellison is also backing Trump.
Hosting a fundraiser.
Yep. And there's a fundraiser this weekend in Palm Beach where it's $586,000 per seat. Expect to have a lot of business members there. I think Nelson Peltz is hosting that at his home, according to the Washington Post. So now that he's done the tax reform and it's been largely a good presidency for business and the markets and the economy, whether he's able to line up more support than last time.
Well, if Bernie Sanders starts solidifying his lead and looks like he's going to get the nomination, I predict we're going to see a lot more of that. You're going to see a lot more CEOs publicly willing to align themselves with Trump and against him.
And does the market freak out, or do they think, oh, he's easily beatable and shrug it off?
I mean, I don't know for sure, but I've been hearing a lot of people say the reason the market went up on Tuesday was because Bernie won that primary, and a lot of investors feel if Sanders is the nominee, then Trump's going to win, and that's good for the market.